So I've been seeing a lot of comments like this over the last couple of days in response to RDJ coming back to the MCU as Doctor Doom, that announcement at Comic-Con, and the success of Deadpool and Wolverine. Two things that have happened over this past weekend that have people going back to these talking points about no stakes in the MCU or multiversal comic book movies in general. Now, the reality is this was a big talking point prior to Endgame, when Marvel was basically the king of the hill to all media, and everyone kept saying that the only issue they have with the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is that there are no stakes, that people do not get killed off or go away in these movies and stay gone. They would come back, or the stakes were not high enough for any of them to be in any real danger. And then, of course, Marvel makes the big move and decides to get rid of arguably their most popular character, which was Tony Stark as Iron Man in Endgame. And that led into the next phase of Marvel movies, where you see the ramifications of all of the things that have happened over the last decade with the MCU. So people were given exactly what they asked for. They asked for a universe where stakes actually mattered, where things that happened actually mattered. And it seems like a lot of people argued that they were rejecting that they didn't want that they wanted to go back to all the stuff that we had before. And you have comments like this from Hannah, and I'm not singling her out in a negative way. This is one of many comments I've seen like this. It says, "I'm so over the multiverses, alternate timelines, and variants. I want stories that matter and have stakes, and for a character's death to actually mean something." And unfortunately, Hannah, just like many other people on these platforms, this is not the overall feeling about the multiverse. No matter how much we make fun of it, no matter how much these movies are self-aware about it, the thing is that multiverse, alternate timelines, variant storylines are massively successful in general. Now, I see this movie used a lot to argue that people are over the concept of the multiverse. They're over all of these characters coming back, and that this is a big signal to everyone that we need to move away from these kinds of movies. Obviously, the Flash film massively underperformed, and it hinged very heavily on the idea of the multiverse. Now, I've said before, there's a lot of other factors that caused the Flash to fail. The multiverse was not one of them, but yet you will see this being used as an example of multiverse fatigue because of the multiverse. They kind of walk hand in hand, but this is an outlier. In this video, I'm going to show you why we keep getting reconnected to these characters that have gone away, that they've been killed off, that they existed in franchises that are not around anymore. They keep bringing them back. I'm going to show you why we keep getting these movies, and why saying this isn't what we want is a lie. All right, so here we're going to take a look at Box Office Mojo, and we're going to be looking at the top 10 most financially successful movies of all time. And I'm going to show you kind of how this all began, how it all started, because in the top 10, we're looking specifically for superhero movies that contain elements of either alternate timelines, time travel, or the multiverse. And if you look at number 2, Avengers Endgame is on this list. Now, yes, you could argue that there are other elements that made Avengers Endgame successful. There's multiple reasons why. However, Hollywood sees this and they go, look, it is a movie that contains nostalgia, it brings characters together, it creates alternate timelines, multiversal stuff. And so we're going to keep pushing with that, because look at how much money we made off of this film. The next superhero movie in this top 10 is Avengers Infinity War, which ties into Endgame. Same storylines, all that. It's a through line. So those two are connected intrinsically. Hollywood takes away the same message from those things. Number 7 is Spider-Man No Way Home, another movie that heavily relied on the multiverse storyline. And then you have the Avengers down at number 10, which was the OG movie before we ever got into any of this stuff. But as you can see, the most successful superhero movies in the top 10 are ones that contain alternate timeline storylines or multiversal story timelines. And Spider-Man No Way Home, you could argue, was advertised specifically as that kind of movie. And look at the amount of money it made. And if you want to specifically look at Marvel and their top 10 highest grossing movies of all time, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is in the top 10 of all of the Marvel films. That is all of the multiversal connected movies in their top 10 sales in terms of like gross sales. So this tells me that the audiences, the general audiences, the people that are going out and spending money on these movies when it comes from the Marvel films, are definitely willing to go out to the theaters and support multiversal films. And it doesn't stop with live action. Multiversal movies that are animated also do extremely well. Here you have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, the highest grossing debut for Sony Pictures Animation, highest grossing Sony Pictures Animation movie ever, highest earning animated comic book movie, highest grossing Haley Steinfeld movie when it came out. These were all amazing feats that this made at the beginning of its run, and it's gone on to be one of the most successful animated franchises for Sony. So this tells me that the audiences do like the idea of the multiverse. They like variants, they like alternate timelines. This is telling me the opposite of what is being said on social media. And let's not even get started on non-superhero movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once that went on to be a massively successful film, not only critically, but fan reception wise, and nominated for so many awards. A fantastic movie. Again, all signs point to fans love and enjoy multiversal stories where the stakes are not the same as what they are in regular films. Also, us comic book fans know that when characters are killed off in the comics, it's almost never permanent. Characters always return. They always come back. So what happens is you have a bunch of people on the film side who don't fundamentally understand that comic books are basically just soap operas with art and animation. That is how they're written. At least that's how they've been written since the 80s. If you look back at Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men, you'll see that those interpersonal relationships and characters being killed off and coming back is a very common thing. Look at Jean Grey. Look at her storyline. So you look all the way back at that point and you realize that characters that get killed off in the comics, even when you know they're dead and gone, they come back. Love it or hate it, this is what comic books are about. And as of the time of recording this video, it looks like Deadpool and Wolverine is off to a massive success for their opening weekend. So bringing back Hugh Jackman as Wolverine shows once again that fans do respond to this kind of nostalgia. It does actually work. And when you include it with a fun franchise like Deadpool, people are going to go out, they're going to support it, they're going to go and see it. Because going into these kinds of movies, and we've talked about this idea of all of the other issues that the movies may have, you won't know that until you go see it. And those numbers won't be reflected until the next box office weekend. So if you're talking about this this weekend that we just passed versus upcoming weekend, you'll know that all of this was the hype surrounding the fan interest in going to see Wolverine come back to do a movie with Deadpool. We'll see how that drops off in the next weekend. We'll see how that works out. But overall, already the movie seems to be a smashing success. So if you look at all of the stuff we've talked about here, the only movie that has kind of floundered out was the Flash movie, and there are other factors that led to that movie not being successful. It wasn't the fact that it was a multiversal film. And so this also applies to why we got Robert Downey Jr. back in the MCU, even if he's playing a different character completely, because regardless of whether or not they said he's not a variant of Tony Stark, he very well could be. We have no clue, honestly, what they're going to end up doing with this. But all signs point to the fact that this is a stable and logical direction for Marvel to go if they want to hit those big numbers. Look at what we just talked about. There's more likelihood that they will reach larger numbers by tugging on nostalgia and pulling on nostalgia and doing cameo stuff and all this other shit that people complain about. There's much more of a likelihood that that will be a success for them than casting someone who is unknown or casting somebody who has not been previously in the MCU. Now, I did a whole video on this. If you want to go check it out, we talked about it on live stream this past weekend. We went into detail about the pros and the cons of all this and our own personal feelings about that. But we here on the internet, the fandom on the internet, this community we're in, are a tiny bubble in the reality that is the general audiences. General audiences are telling the studios that they like multiversal stories, they like seeing characters come back, and they don't really care about all of the other stuff that we complain about on the internet in terms of these types of lateral moves. So let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with any of this. All signs point towards people wanting multiverse stories, wanting time travel stories, wanting to see variants and people come back. It's just the numbers don't lie. They're there. So regardless of what we're being told on the internet or what people's opinions are on the internet, this is why the studios keep doing it. We are at fault for this. We keep going out and supporting it. And when I say we, I mean the audience that goes out and supports it. They're going to keep doing it. I don't necessarily have a big problem with that, but that's a discussion for an entirely different video. I just wanted to bring the numbers to you guys. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on this down below.